Today's conveyancing clients expect speed, clarity, and frequent updates. But tight margins and rising client expectations put pressure on conveyancing practices. With smart automation and clear workflows, Leap helps conveyancing teams spend less time on admin and more time supporting their clients. Learn more at leap.co.uk.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today, welcome along Steve Lucas and Mike Taylor, technology consultants in the legal space, and the discussion is all about how law firms can make the most of their technology. It was really interesting because in the run-up to organising this podcast, I met with Steve and was talking about what he does and how he does it. We were talking about that mantra or that thing that I think we all know about. We probably use 10 to 15% of the ability of the technology that we've got in our hands, on our mobile phones or in our businesses. And we know it can do more, but we don't always make the most of how to do that. And from what I understood when we were chatting, Steve, that's a really big part of your role. And what you do with firms is to help them make more of what they have rather than, encourage them to go and invest in a whole load of new stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So our main focus and I suppose mantra is work out what you've got, make the most of it before you start investing in new systems, and going down that disruption of finding a new system and the rip and replace and all that sort of stuff. So a big focus of ours is just trying to get people to make the most of it. And if they can't make the most of what they've got in the business we've got, we can develop things at a better price and a better way of accessing the technologies, a cheaper way. So, we don't advocate for full change. We just advocate for what have you got. Let's just try and build these little building blocks around it to make your lives a bit easier, really.
There's also that side of things where, companies don't know what they actually want. They don't know what they've got. So they've bought a load of software over the years and they've accumulated all these things. There's crossover. So they've got about two or three systems that all do the same thing. But they don't know. And then the other piece would be the new shiny thing. So AI is obviously the thing on everyone's end of everyone's tongue. People want to do AI, don't really understand it, don't really know what they want to do. Some people are scared of it. Everyone knows they need to do it. Yeah, so there's always that thing of these companies don't actually, a lot of times, know exactly what they want.
Really, I mean, take like Microsoft 365, it's massive. No one really pays a lot of money for that a month, really. There's so much technology and solutions in that platform. You've got a whole load of things just in the cupboard that you're not using straight away, really.
We'll absolutely get onto that because I know when we were sort of chatting, Steve, we were saying we use Word, Outlook, Excel, might use PowerPoint, but it's got an awful lot more in its armory. Let's start with what makes you guys qualified to provide this information and consultancy to the legal sector. I mean, Mike, what's your background? Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm if you like, software developer by trade, going back to sort of 2006-7. Steve was actually my boss originally. Prior to that,
still am, David. I like to think I still am,
And then over the years, worked my way up to in different law firms as IT manager, IT director, CTOs, and all the titles which they give you, sort of board level stuff. Went out the legal sector for a couple of years and then sort of come back. So yeah, understand the pain points from all sides, really. So understanding the processes. I've also got a couple of companies. So I've got a marketing agency who provide lead gen for law firms specifically, and then we've got what Steve and I do, which is the automation, which is in a bit technology, which do all the integrations and the automations, which we'll get onto. So that's a short bit of my CV there.
What about yourself, Steve?
Similar, to be fair. So again, Mike came to work for me many years ago as a developer. I think I was an IT director in a law firm at that point. And then my career just carried on. I went to work in other different places. Took Mike with me a good couple of times, to be fair, because he's a good developer. He's one of them developers who can just ask him, can we do this? And he's going, give me an hour, give me 2 hours. So we always work together on automation for law firms, like from the very, very early days. And even so much so that we created the first sort of Sky Red red button application for a conveyancer, 2000 and something, you know, when it was the old school Sky Digital Plus stuff. So we've always worked together on automation stuff, but our journeys have been similar in the sense of we've both hit CTO level and board member level jobs in our own sort of independent roles. And then we decided probably sometime last year, we've always been sort of friends and stayed in touch. We've had some ideas for automating various different things. Let's just get the sort of band back together a little bit and go that way. But yeah, similar. We've all got similar backgrounds. We've done software, we've done networks, we've done supplier management, we've done IT director, IT manager, CTO. But that gives us 20 plus years of experience each to bring to the table and just go, you're still doing the same thing. Some law firms that we were doing 20 years ago was innovative then, but now it's not really. So, helping law firms sort of catch up to where the world is. So yeah, similar backgrounds, really.
I want to dive into lots of what you've kind of talked about there, but one of the things that stood out for me was the point you make about crossover of systems. And I think we see this in an awful lot of businesses where they've invested in technology that they know does one particular thing, but they're not particularly aware of some of the other functionality that it's got, that then they go off and find another piece of software that does that.
Yeah, to plug the gap.
Yeah, how do we tackle that? Is that an education issue? I mean, is it a sales issue? Because there's a responsibility on the sort of sales process to make people and firms much more aware of some of the capabilities of these products and services.
Yeah, and that's where the consultancy side of the business comes into, because one of our main sort of roles is providing that support and assistance to law firms. So actually sitting down with them and getting the requirements down on a piece of paper as to what they actually want to do. Sometimes that just makes the law firm focus their mind and go, actually, we don't really want to do that. We don't need that type of software. And then it's back to vendors and working out, well, does product A do what law firm thinks? You do get a bit of a problem with salespeople. They'll obviously oversell the product and they'll say it'll do X, Y, and Z, and then in reality it doesn't. No. So yeah, again,
salespeople oversell products, Steve.
Yeah, they do amazingly. They do, yeah, really. But I think because we know the products that are out there and we know the pitfalls and we know what they do and don't do, it's a good thing when a lawyer brings in a consultant who knows the industry like that, so they can advise them properly. Sometimes we come in too late and they've made a decision and they've gone to a different case management system and they haven't really understood what they're going to lose by going to that system. And then they end up going back, and it's managing that fallout and the demigration, if you like, and going back to where they were. So they've got to get some help sometimes, just work out what they've got, what they haven't got, and try and make a better decision, I think.
In your sort of experience, Mike, as a moving your way up through the IT departments in firms, vendor management is obviously critical. Is it an area that firms invest enough time into?
Some do, some don't. I think there's definitely, over the years, there's definitely a culture of getting on the phone to their mate who's also got a law firm saying, what software do you use? And that's pretty much all investigation they'll do. But then as the company grows as well, and this isn't just typical to sort of legal, as those law firms grow, your departments get siloed. So you've got a marketing department, you've got an IT department, you've got a front-end department, sort of first response sort of thing, the call center type stuff, and then you got your lawyers, and everyone goes off and buys their own software and there's crossover and all that type of stuff. And then at some point, a CTO will come in, or someone like Steve will come in and go, well, hang on a minute, you've got 15 bits of software here that all cross over, what you're trying to solve. So I don't think it's specifically to legal. So I suppose to answer your question is typically, I think a lot of it, on majority, I don't know what you think, Steve, is an afterthought. So it's only later on when they're trying to do a new project or bring something else in, where they bring someone like Steve in and go and gets reviewed, and they go, we didn't know this. Mm-hmm. We probably should have spent some time on this 3 years ago.
The vendors are happy with that, aren't they? Because the vendors just think, okay, well, just buy the software, and then it's in there for normally 3 to 5 years anyway. It's contracted. It's making sure you made that decision before you get locked in. So a contract you can't get out of because you've accepted the software and it's embedded.
The embedded is the key word there. So it's not just the contracts, especially if you talk case management systems. You use the case management system for 5 years, to move then to something else is
that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
all the data.
It's a big headache. Yeah.
It's huge.
I think one of the issues that a lot of firms face is the interoperability of systems, and we've kind of touched on that in the course of the discussion so far. That feels like an increasingly important part of trying to drive efficiencies within organizations. So we've seen it in conveyancing massively over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. And I think we're starting to see it now in other areas of the law as well. That presumably is a big part of what you guys are doing in terms of working with firms to ensure that the systems are all talking to each other, that the data is able to be shared, and importantly that there's security between all of that as well.
Yeah, and it's that interoperability point you raised. So the article we wrote for today's media a couple of weeks ago around RPA, robotic process automation, that's the ultimate sort of fallback for interoperability. So the nirvanas, the systems can all talk to each other, and you can move data between different things. And in reality, it's not as easy as that. Sometimes there's no API, or there's no way to import or export. So we've been able to come up with things where the robots can do it at a fraction of the cost of what it would take to sometimes develop integration. So I think they have got to be mindful when they purchase a piece of software what level of interoperability they can have and what level of integration they can do with it. Otherwise, again, it's another problem to be dealt with by the legal techs, which can be costly, really.
Help us out here, Steve, because we've just dived into robotic process automation, and I'm going to be quite frank. Although I read the article, it's still quite difficult to understand. Give us the plotted definition.
It's essentially whatever you can do as a human, like moving the mouse and clicking on things on a system, or typing something in, or reading something and copying and pasting. The robot can essentially do that. So we have tools which will go on like a conveyancing website, for example, and log in and take all the details of the property that's been sold, the quote that's been provided, certain documents, and take that and put it into someone's case management system. Whereas the old way of doing that is you've got to integrate into some sort of API and send data and pull data, and you've got to pay a developer ridiculous amounts of money to do it. But RPA in its sort of base terms is if you can do it as a human in a case management system, you can click on things and you can type things in, but then we can take that manual task away, and the robot using RPA can do it. So a lot of the AI that's touted about can be classed as RPA as well. It's just that robotic process. It's just something that's repeatable over and over and over again. But it can save a law firm like ridiculous amounts of hours, Mike, can't it? We've just done one now, which is just, it just gives them so much time back, hasn't it?
In simple terms, you say, for example, you've got an admin member of staff that logs into a portal, fills in a form, and because there's no integration, they then have to copy and paste something out into the case management system, then maybe run a workflow and press a couple of buttons. That could take them 10 minutes, for example. The robot can do that in a minute or less, and there's no mistakes. So obviously you've got human error in there as well. So obviously
typing things wrong, aren't they?
Typing things, copy and pasting stuff over and accidentally doing it. There's data issues, obviously data, compliance issues, potentially sticking something in the wrong case and all that side of things. But it can also really be quite clever in the robot and the underlying technology. Selenium is one of the technologies we use. Say that after a couple of drinks. Essentially what it can do is interrogate the software and actually do a bit more than a human can. So it could go to a website and actually read the underlying HTML and pull some of the HTML out, and then process that and move that over to the case management system, or from the case management system into something else, or just simply running tasks within a case management system. Some CMSs don't have the ability to do automation. So all essentially we go, right, well, how do you send a letter? You have to click here, you have to get the case, blah, 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 select the right one, press send. We just record that, and every 10-20 seconds it sends one, whereas a human could take, again, 10 minutes. Return on investment is amazing. Obviously you can schedule them to go out of hours. All types of factors come in. So some systems run slower if lots of people are on them at once. So you could have this running at night rather than in the day, and all this type of stuff. So its capabilities are sort of endless, really.
We always say they don't go sick, they don't turn up late. They just do what they're told and just take over. It's a similar technology that you see in like the ticket tout world, where they they'll send a bot at like Ticketmaster and buy 10,000 tickets. You know, it's the same technology, but they're just using it for something they shouldn't probably be using it for. Saves time, saves money, you know, keeps people happy.
And the beauty of it is people are naming these robots as well. So
Yeah.
the companies are working and starting to name them. The latest one's called Stanley, Stan the Man.
Is it? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
You get quite attached to it. And we think like people sometimes think, well, the robots are coming, they're going to take my job, type of stuff. But we've actually found that they're actually quite like protective of the robot, and the robot's saving loads of time. So we've got a couple out there that have been named by the staff, which is quite funny.
You know, you touched on AI, and it's very difficult to have any conversation at the moment without that sort of rolling off the tongue. But I mean, you know, how much of this was achievable, you know, 5-10 years ago, and how much of it is achievable because of the development of technology and the development of AI?
Well, I mean, RPA's been around like forever, hasn't it? So one of the big case management systems, Proclaim, they've had a thing called Task Server, which has been around forever, and that's an early sort of form of RPA, really. AI now is obviously, everyone's wants AI, and it does a whole load of things. When used properly, it's brilliant. A lot of law firms are scared of it, really, because of the compliance bits and pieces, and where does your data go, and all that type of stuff. And it is a concern, you know, when you put your data into like ChatGPT, for example, or some sort of LLM, where does it go? Does it learn from it? Does it then spit it back out where it shouldn't spit it back out somewhere? But again, we've just done what we've always done and gone back to our basics of protect client data, protect the network, look after things. And we've got partners we use in our business, which are like a closed LLM. So the LLM, the ChatGPT brain is segmented from the internet. It's in a data center in the UK. It's not on the internet. It's not a public one. It's a closed one just for that law firm. So we just approached it. Well, okay, AI is a good thing. It's, you know, it helps all sorts of problems be solved. But there's a compliance and a data protection issue that everyone's really worried about. But it's pretty good. We use it a lot for reading documents and summarising things and summarising case history. So one law firm client we've got, they use it to just review personal injury files, and it summarises the case, spots risk and spots various different things, and gives it its opinion on the success of the case just based on the notes in the history, which is quite cool. But there's obviously, you probably know there's a thing called hallucinations in AI, and you've really got to tell the AI what to do and what not to do. People don't think about the what not to do, but that's how you reduce these hallucinations and you get true, accurate results from an AI system. But it doesn't solve all the problems, AI, and everyone goes on and on about AI, and you know, it's going to steal our jobs and going to do certain things, but I don't think it's there yet. But in a year's time, it's going to be such a different beast, Mike, isn't it? It's going to be something mad, I think.
Yeah, I think people are like a lot of the tools out there that when you break down what they're doing is they're putting some textual information, whether it be an email, a document, or something, into a LLM, and they give it some parameters. I think a lot of this it's very similar, and we're only just scratching the surface in the legal industry, definitely, on what it can do. The fear obviously is people sticking client data into ChatGPT and into, you know, Claude or whatever, just saying, oh, can you just summarize this for me, which people are doing. And then as Steve mentioned there, we work with a partner where we can actually get, if they wanted to, if depending on how secure they wanted to get, we can actually stick this in their own data center, so it never leaves their data center at all. Where it will go though, some of the advanced stuff that they're doing now with images, videos, and we know this because the sort of marketing agency side of things, but also writing code, and this sort of almost having an agent or an AI employee where you can go and get it to do tasks and schedule them. So rather than just waiting for me to press the button to go and do something, the future will be it will just go off and do these things systematically when other things happen. And I'll just go, this has happened in a case, I'm just going to go off and, you know, do these next steps without anyone even asking me to. That's where it's going to go. And that's when you can start to think about the sort of robots telling the AI what to do.
Yeah, and then we've got Terminator 7, the takeover, and that we're all living in their shadow. But there's been some funny things recently. I don't know if you keep up on the tech news or not, David, but there's been like the Claude vending machine where it's experiments to run. So Claude, the Anthropic AI bot, was to run a vending machine and it decided the prices, and its goal was to make as much money as possible. It realised that the way to do that was to not give refunds for anything. So when people were buying things and they were like out of date, it was coming up with all different ways of not giving the refund. It could keep the profits, and that was its only goal. So there's some fun stories out there. The worst one I heard was a couple of years ago, where they had two AI bots speaking to each other about how they solve humanitarian problems, for example, in the world. And it kept running scenarios back and forward, and it came up with the ultimate solution of genocide, which just solve all of mankind's problems. So just like wipe them out. So it's, I suppose, when you start strapping machine guns to AI things and all sorts, that's when you've got to worry. But for now, it's just computers arguing with each other, I suppose.
I think one of the things that strikes me about whether it's robotic process automation, whether it's AI, and to a certain extent, whether it's just, vendor management or choosing the right technology, there's a real art of the possible challenge. And I think you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, Mike. It's about helping organizations understand what they think they need in the first place. I mean, that's 2/3 of the battle, isn't it? Because then you can go and you can find the right solutions, but it's that whole process of understanding that art of the possible is the real challenge.
The way my brain works is I see things in processes, probably why I fell into doing this for a living. So if you take any sort of legal process, every different type of law, or so conveyancing's got its own sort of path. Yes, can go into sale, purchase, remortgage, and all those type of things. Certain types of claims, HDR and PCP and all those type of things tend to have their own sort of way of running. So the way I've always looked at it is gone, right, okay, there's the end-to-end process. There's where the lead comes in, there's where the case finishes, and then either get they complete on their home, or they get their money from, the claim, or whatever the ending is. And then it's to go, which bit of software can fix which bit of the process. What I've found over the years that people try and use the case management system to do everything. Some case management systems are brilliant at running cases, but then they'll try and use the same thing on the front end to handle the lead generation of the business. Falls flat on its face, quite simply because it's too slow. So some case management systems can take sort of like, they've got these automated processes, could take hours before it responds to someone who's online. But if you do that online, you've got about a second before someone's going off to your competitor. And then likewise, when you get to the back end of things, so the sort of the finance stuff, some of the case management systems have it built in, some do integrations, some won't go anywhere near it. So people put all these different tools in to try and do that. So when you're talking about AI and all these bits of things, it's exactly the same way as going, right, okay, well, if we want to use AI, where in the process should we put it, and start small and then go out. So take emails, for example. So emails coming into a business, most law firms have a single mailbox which all this data goes to. We've actually got a system that looks at these mailboxes, reads them, and then puts them into the case, into the right case. So it reads what's in the file, and then you can go, okay, well, can I summarize that in AI? Really simple, as you know. Can we then use some AI to find out if there's any issue? So is it a complaint? Does the compliance need to know? Is there a risk on this email? Does that need to go to a compliance as well? And you can start to build up this sort of process of each stage of the case. And I think that's where potentially some people go wrong, is they get these ideas that they need to use a tool and then just try and push it out everywhere, rather than just going, okay, well, let's start here, perfect that. Like, what else can it do? And just systematically build out a year's sort of, or a couple of years worth of work. You know what I mean? Well, like a big plan, rather than trying to just take over the world on day one.
I've heard the phrase boiling the ocean. You have to sort of deal with these things in bite-sized chunks, Steve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the problem. So people, because the AI is like the buzz at the minute, everyone wants AI this, AI that. But, we get inquiries in about, I want to talk about an AI chatbot that does X, Y, and Z. You'll go meet the prospective clients, and then when you sit down and start talking through it, you find out that you don't have precedent letters that automatically get merged, and you don't have triggers that come in and send something. So you're like, well, okay, you want to have like the fancy Ferrari, but your staff are still copying and pasting Word files when you can just create a button that sends all that. So, there's probably a responsibility on the law firm owner to actually just take a breather and just leave all that new noise and look after your core, and then get that right before you start, strapping the rockets on top of it, really. But yeah, that's the problem. They always want to do too much too quickly. It's not the right way. to do it really.
We're heading towards the end of the time we have for the discussion, and I think if I was listening to this discussion rather than hosting it, I'd be sat there saying this all sounds well and good, but it's going to be an expensive exercise to engage with people like yourselves who've got the experience and the expertise that you've got. Where does that return on investment come from? How quickly do you kind of typically see that happens? Because at the end of the day, law firms are businesses, and these are decisions that are not just workflow and efficiency orientated. These have got to be commercial decisions as well.
Yeah. So the way we sort of look at the pricing model of the sort of robotic side of things, we went back and forth, didn't we, Steve, of like, did we do a flat fee? But we've settled with, and it seems to have proven quite well as a transaction model. So a bit like you would SMS or anything like that law firms are used to paying is these tasks that you wanted the robot to do, you just pay per transaction. So if you do 1,000, you pay for 1,000. If you do 5,000, 10,000, and we do scaling on the pricing. So that seems to fit quite well into the model of how law firms sort of pay for things, and it's not just a big sort of 20, 30, 40 upwards grand project. It can start small, and then as they get the return on investment, which we'll touch on in a sec, they can start thinking about, okay, well, what else can it do? And the robot then starts to do other things within the business. So that thing about starting small and then going bigger. And then the return on investment side of things, which we investigate the tasks that they want the robots to do. We figure out sort of a ballpark of what that will be from a human to cost. So say it costs £10 for a human to run one of these tasks. We have basically on the system, they have a dashboard, the config, and where the exceptions go. But then on the dashboard, you have things like, how many tasks have ran, how many exceptions you've had, and you can do all different types of reports on it. But then the senior manager will then want, well, we're paying this money out. What's our return on investment? And quite simply, we just have within the dashboard, this is how much it costs a human to do. So we've ran 1,000 tasks. That would have cost a human £2,000. The robot there has done it for a fraction of that. And there's also the time as well. So obviously, human could have took 2 weeks to do that, and this has just done it in a couple of hours.
Whenever we probably approach a project, either in the consultancy or in the software company, it's that ROI we lead with. It's probably the way to say. So, we know my background is I started life as an accountant, so I'm always considering the pound, shilling, and pence in any sort of business, because that's what I was trained to do very early on. So whenever we approach a client's consultancy or software, it's always, okay, where's the return? What's the cost going to be? What are you going to get back? So when we do a lot of projects around replacing people's PMSs and CMSs, there's a lot of cost in that from other consultancies, because they think they have to do everything from the sort of cradle to the grave. When in reality, when we approach a project like that, we're just looking at the vendor selection, the vendor management bit, because in reality, all the project management stuff can be taken over by the vendor with just a bit of oversight from the consultant at that point. So we're always looking for the value in our services, but the return for the client's the most important thing. Otherwise, what's the point in spending the money? But the dashboards Mike speaks about, and then visuals, being able to give a law firm, well, you've saved 5 people a week. You've now got a robot that costs, half of that cost. It just brings it to life and makes it a bit more visual for them. And you can log in at any time, or they can ask us and we can send it. But we always build in the metrics and the KPIs in there. And then when the robots and when the consultants do various different things, it's very easy for us to present a dashboard that says, this is the hours we've used, this is what we've accomplished, and this is what you should be seeing as a benefit, really. Otherwise, you just get asked after you've done 3 months, what have we actually done? What have we saved? Whereas we front load them questions and just say, all the way through, you're gonna find out. But the ROI is important, and again, that's what sort of can set different consultants apart, because of our background of we've done every single job within an IT departments. We've also developed software, we've released software, we've done all them different areas. We know where the fat lies in projects and where you waste hours. We just steer the clients away from that, really.
Yeah, and then I suppose there's one sort of hidden ROI which we hadn't considered, and that is, these tasks, which generally are repetitive tasks that the robot does, obviously change is always a big thing in any company, but obviously in law firms, changing a piece of software, bringing a robot in, as Steve mentioned earlier, how it's coming in to take my job. People are actually thankful because it's like they can now get on with the job they're meant to do. So rather than spending an entire Monday logging into a portal, copying and pasting stuff over, it's like I don't have to worry about that. I can actually do my job, which I'm getting paid to do, and you get a whole day back a week. Yeah, so that's been sort of a hidden return on investment that we've seen.
Yeah, like you say, sort of a bit of a double whammy in terms of both saving the money on the delivery, but also then, enabling a fee earner to bank a couple more units or whatever it might be.
Give them some time back to do more appropriate work. A lot of the things we do is trying to cut out like the repetitive admin stuff, which is just over and over, allocating mail, allocating post, and it's just lost time in a law firm because it only increases because they want more work, more cases. Yeah. More cases equals more emails, more post. So they're like the low hanging easy fruit where you can really see a return straight away because you're giving resource back to the firm.
We could probably talk about this for the rest of the day, but we are out of time. It's been great to have you both on the podcast and talk about sort of the for me, what I would describe as the art of the possible, and to get firms and organizations. I know every time I have these conversations, I sit and I think to myself, gosh, how much admin do we do? How many repeatable tasks do we do that we can automate in some way? It's useful to be reminded of that periodically. So my thanks both to Mike and to Steve for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, David. Appreciate it.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. Thank you to Steve and to Mike. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.